Guys, thanks so much for coming back this week. We are very excited this week because we get to interview Levi and Lydia Waldon. So we're really excited about that. They've just returned from doing a 2-year mission in Guatemala. So we're really excited to talk to them just about the journey that led up to that and also what that experience was like and also what it's been like coming back. So guys, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanhanks for inviting us to be on.
Very excited.
Glad to be here.
Good, I'm excited. We like to start off with like a really hard question, just kind of knock it right out of the park.
Great.
That way everybody's calm, everybody's comfortable. So we're gonna give you just one quick question. You ready?
Sounds good.
Take it away, honey.
Ready?
Yeah.
I think Levi's thinking.
build up.
All right. If you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be?
Tongs is the first thing that came to
Amen.
mind.
There you
Don't
go.
know why.
There you go.
Blender.
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 Blender's not a utensil.
That's not a utensil.
Oh, you said
an
you, I was
appliance.
thinking appliance. Potato masher.
Potato mash. He
Perfect.
said blender.
Blender.
I heard if you were a kitchen, and my brain just filled in appliance because I've had that question before.
Well, that's fantastic. Tongs, a masher.
Yeah.
I like it.
We'll stick
I
with
like
it.
it. Good job. We're going to put it in the book. That's
Good.
a
There
good
you go.
one.
There you go.
Oh, guys, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out. I know you're busy and you have a lot going on, so I'm very, very grateful you're willing to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
But we'd love to kind of just start, if you could just tell us, before we get to like what you've been doing the last few years, just can you just give us like, tell us a little bit about your childhood, like when you got saved, what that experience was like what led you guys to like even just meeting each other? If you could just talk, maybe just start with what your childhood was like and when you got saved.
Cool.
Want me to go first?
Go for it.
Well, I grew up in a big homeschool family.
Sure.
So had a lot of siblings and was homeschooled all the way through high school. So kind of a little sheltered childhood, but it was cool. We lived in the countryside a little bit and grew up going to church and just always hearing about Jesus, and just kind of believed it from a young age. But I do remember when I actually received salvation. I remember being in bed one night when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And it was really weird for a 7-year-old, but I am a contemplator, so but I just felt like something was wrong, something was off in my life, and I felt afraid, and I was laying in bed, and so I just said, God, I don't know what this is, but I just want to ask you to just come into my life and fix me or whatever it is. I don't remember my exact words, but
Sure.
but it was crazy. I felt just like this big burden lift off of me.
Oh, so good.
And it's just like something like left the room and and this peace came in, and that was my salvation experience.
It's amazing.
And then after that, going through high school, I was pretty involved at church and youth group.
Sure.
And was pretty close to God in my teen years, and then I kind of took a detour, which
Sure.
all about.
Yeah.
And I don't need to get into the whole thing. It's a long, crazy story.
Sure.
But basically, after a breakup, I really fell off the wagon with God, and I had a lot of hurt and a lot of rejection that I kind of spiraled out of control with, and got into some substance issues and some depression.
Yeah.
And but God was really faithful to bring me back out of that.
Yeah.
And just had a moment when He opened my eyes and showed me that His love was all I needed. His love was enough, and really has healed me from that, which I'm so thankful for. And I kind of met Lydia as I was just kind of working my way out of that worldly lifestyle and getting back into the church. So maybe I'll let her go into her childhood now.
Can I say one thing about that time? Because I think that's when I knew you. That's when I met you, as you were going in the midst of that.
Yeah.
But there was this thing about you, even in the midst of where you were at and your heartache and your frustration with God, you still loved Him, and you were still always trying. Like, you would show up at the most random meetings, right?
That's true.
But you loved, like, you were always excited about what God was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in your worst moments, and there was a purity. I remember always, me and Mandy, we hadn't been around church a whole lot, but every time we'd see you, I was excited to hear your stories because they had so much enthusiasm about what God was doing, even in the midst of you not wanting to walk it out with Him.
Well, and I think the thing about you was like you were just honestly real.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was super helpful for us actually because, you're a real Christian with having
Yeah.
real struggles, right? And it was refreshing to know that everything didn't have to be perfect, right? You could still go through things and still be going through things, but show up at church, right? In the most random times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but still have these struggles that you were dealing with.
Yeah.
It wasn't like something you stepped back of until you had everything together before you decided to engage again. So I
Yeah.
appreciated that.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
You were incredibly. I remember me and Maddie were talking about you guys a couple days ago because we knew this was coming up, and I remember being blown away by you in the midst of that season for you. Your foundations of who God was were so strong. For me and Mandy, because we were new to Christianity in so many ways, it was inspiring. It was like, wow, and your foundations were so secure. I remember saying to Mandy, this is years ago. I remember leaving. We was at Exchange and we left, and I was like, I don't know what his parents did to lock him into these foundations. In the midst of everything else that's happening, he still knows who Jesus is, and he knows where to go when it gets to this really bad place.
Yeah.
But it was great to see, and obviously trusting and knowing God was going to bring you through that in a dynamic way, and He did.
Yeah.
It's a great testimony to your character and who you
Thanks.
are. So
Yeah, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, but with addiction and stuff
Yeah.
like that, really, I think we're most vulnerable to addiction when we don't have good bonds, good relationships.
Yeah.
And there's a TED Talk about it, which is really interesting. But I think I did have such a strong connection to God as a kid, as a teenager, and to my family, and always kind of maintained that bond. And so even though it was like I was running as hard as I could in the other direction,
Yeah.
I think that bond was it was like a boomerang, and it was like,
Yeah.
I knew it was like it was inevitable going to suck me back
Yeah.
later on. And that's just like the power of God's love and family and friends who were always like believed in me and praying for me.
So good.
So,
I love
but yeah, so thankful to be back on the sunny side.
it. We're grateful you're back as well. So it's awesome. But yeah, if we could go to just a little bit about you.
Yeah, we actually have pretty similar stories
Sure.
in a lot of ways. So I grew up in a Christian family. My parents are pastors. They have been for most of my life.
Yeah.
And so I was saved at a young age, and I remember like as a kid, like the Holy Spirit was my best friend. Like I would just like wake up and talk to him. It's almost like an imaginary friend, like a stuffed animal.
Sure.
Like say good morning, hi Holy Spirit. Like that was just like my life. And so I'm really thankful for just having that experience and
Yeah.
having like that a childhood growing up with God. And
Yeah.
I just remember being kind of blown away by the Holy Spirit, like his aspect of God, that like he is like there, like he's tangible. I can feel him, I can talk to him.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I also had some ups and downs throughout my journey. So I wish that I'd just grown into the Holy Spirit as my best friend and just
Sure.
kept going.
Yeah.
But, I think that maybe for me, like after I went to college, I kind of had an identity crisis.
Sure.
Career-wise, and so that kind of spiraled me into some interesting ways. So I had a plan throughout high school. I was going to go to college, pursue this career. I worked in that career. I thought everything was perfect, and then within one semester of college, I was like, this isn't what I want to do. I'm failing out of everything.
Sure.
And that kind of like started me on this 180 of, well, if my plan didn't work, I should just never have a plan again, and then I can't be disappointed. And so,
Wow.
obviously, that wasn't a good
Sure.
reaction to that,
Yeah.
but in my mind, that was like a way to protect myself. And
Yeah.
so, when you have a mentality like that, you attract some weird people, and
Yeah.
they are like, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I don't have any plan. I'll do whatever your plan is. And so, I definitely kind of like met some interesting people,
Sure.
started living interesting lifestyles, also had substance issues. I kind of came out of it one day and was like, I think I have some things that I've been avoiding dealing with probably for years almost.
Yeah.
And so It was good. I ended up like going to therapy, kind of learning more about mental health, which I honestly had never heard about.
Sure.
So by this time I was 19 and just learning like what a panic attack was and realizing that I've been having those and I had no idea.
Sure.
And so just like things that I was learning about through that side, and then also just repairing my relationship with God, kind of like interesting how you were talking about how he never just like rejected God, but I definitely wasn't hanging out with him. So I just kind of was getting back to that point. So right around that time, I decided to move to Michigan. It was supposed to be temporary, but I'm still here. This is like 7 years ago. So that's when I met him, and I was in a very similar stage of just kind of trying to figure out what direction I wanted to go in with my life and kind of recommit myself to God. And so it's been a really fun journey, and I'm happy to be here.
That's so cool. Like me and Amanda know your parents and your parents very well, and Jim, your dad, I just have the utmost respect for him. He led the campus in Holland for a while, for a good little bit, and then he went out to do something else, lead a different church elsewhere. But he just was such a great guy, and I remember. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember him telling me that you guys liked each other.
Yeah.
And I was really excited. And I'm sorry, man, but he was real nervous.
I
remember. But there was this thing about you when I the first time I ever met you, man, you just kind of, you seemed like you had it all together. Right? That's what it seemed like.
Glad it seemed like that.
Yeah, it did. It seemed like you had it all together, and it was like, but you could see. I remember the first time I saw you guys together, I thought this is gonna work out. You could just see it. You spoke like I've always joked like I've had many conversations with each of you at different times, and sometimes like I don't really understand what you're saying, but I get what you mean, kind of thing, right? Yeah. But you guys just got each other so well, and there was an aspect we joke about that all the time. Like there's so often we have conversations with people we don't really understand what they're saying, but we get what they mean, and it's because everybody has like a flow to how they think and how they interact with each other, and you guys were just such a good mesh. It was really fun to watch. And then how long did you guys date?
We dated for 3 years, and then we got married. And have been married for 3 years, so.
That's amazing.
3 years,
wow.
Yeah, it's 3 years tomorrow.
Yeah.
No way.
Happy anniversary.
I remember it.
Come on. That's awesome.
3 for 3.
The more they come, though, the longer it's like, that's right, that's coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've been married 22 years now.
Congrats.
22
Congratulations.
years, yeah.
So exciting.
And it does get more fun every year.
That's
Every
awesome.
year I've been married, it's been more fun than the year before. There's changes every year, right? But it's like you guys are in for a big change. You have a baby coming soon.
We do. Yes, we
Excited.
do.
Are you saying if it's a boy or a girl? Do you know?
It's a boy.
It's a boy.
Yay.
What names you kicking around? You want to say
We
here?
got,
Announce it
we
right
got
here.
nothing. We're working on names. We'll take suggestions.
We are in.
Yeah.
We're in discussions.
We're in discussions. All right, well, listen, just throw Carl in the hat.
Yeah.
Somebody just throw that in there.
Carl Jr.
Yeah. It's amazing. But no, so that's exciting. So that's you got that coming up. And I had the pleasure of being able to marry you guys, which I thought one of the greatest honors of my life was being able to do that with you guys. And watching you guys come together as a couple has been a real treat. And so just wanted to honor you and celebrate the people that you are. One of the things that me and Mandy really, really admire about you guys is like you kind of love people in a very wide net, and you accept people where they are and you bring them closer in and you walk closely with them in a way that's very commendable. And we've just been really impressed with you over the years.
Thanks.
So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. But we do want to get to kind of talk about what you guys have been up to. So you guys did a what I would call a missionary service in Guatemala.
Yep.
And so can you just talk to us about the journey of that, how that came about, what made you decide to step out and do it, and then also what it was like?
Yeah. Well, so we had just gotten married recently when we found out about the opportunity. And it's funny because at our wedding, we had gotten a prophetic word from Mike Dugan.
Yeah.
And he said, just enjoy your marriage, enjoy this season, it's going to be awesome. But I feel that somewhere between 8 to 12 months, God's just going to drop a plan in your lap of exactly what the next season's going to look like. So we had gotten a bunch of words, and so we just put it in the back of your mind like you do. And but yeah, I think it was it 8 months or 10 months, something after we had been married when we learned this opportunity in Guatemala. And so it was through a ministry that Lydia's dad works with called Gifts of Love International. And they've been doing stuff in Guatemala for a long time. They have one of the 3 largest orphanages in the country. They train pastors from like over 100 churches all around Guatemala and just like support them, and they do theological training with all these pastors. They're also kind of working into the political realm of Guatemala, which is cool because Guatemala has a lot of political corruption. Yeah. And the UN has been in Guatemala trying to help mediate that, and the UN actually approved a course from this ministry to teach politicians about biblical principles for politics.
That's
That's amazing.
So it's crazy, like United Nations stamp of approval. So this ministry, they've been in all these different parts of Guatemala, but they've had this dream to start a young adult discipleship program. One of the main reasons is for the kids who are aging out of the orphanage. Because the government tells them, if these kids, when they turn 18, they got to be out of there. So they wanted kind of a halfway program where they can get foundation for the rest of their life. They had this dream to start this ministry, and also, just to be able to influence that demographic of the country, because this ministry has a really cool kingdom vision of the whole nation of Guatemala being discipled to Christ, which is very along the lines of what we believe at the point. And so they had pretty much everything in line. They just needed a couple to go down there and live with the students, help administrate, and just kind of develop and launch the program. And they were looking and looking. Everybody else involved is Guatemalan. And they were looking, and they just hadn't found a couple. And I think Lydia, your mom, was talking to the director's wife. They're like, yeah, they just can't find a couple, And Lydia's mom's like, well, I bet Levi and Lydia would love to do that. And it was like, yeah, Levi speaks perfect Spanish, which was not at all true. And, so then I think they relayed that to you, the opportunity, and you talked to us about it. And we were just kind of like, yeah, we'll have to think about that. I think it was 2 months before we would have to go, or something like that. We were like, yeah, do you guys want to do this? Think it could be good?
No pressure.
No pressure. And so we're like, okay, well, that sounds cool. We need to think about it. And then, but I think we went home after that, and I was like, we got to do it. It was just like the timing, and it's crazy because we had literally had conversations where we said, it'd be cool to maybe live in Guatemala for a couple years. Literally, we had said that.
We had told multiple people that I don't remember talking to about it, but like 5 years before, they were like, yeah, I remember you told me that you wanted to go to Guatemala. I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, you're doing it now. That's awesome. I was like, totally forgot. But it was, really cool, like timing and all the moment.
So it just lined up like with that prophetic word. And so we were like, okay, we're going to process it overnight, over a couple days, but I think we're going to do it. So then we quit our jobs, which is fun. It's always fun to do. God's behind you. Just put in your 2 weeks, and then we packed up our stuff and put it in my parents' basement. Took a bunch of stuff to Goodwill and got ready to go.
So cool.
So you spoke perfect Spanish.
According to her mom, I
did. Did you speak any Spanish?
I spoke 0 Spanish, and I still speak very minimal Spanish.
Has your Spanish improved?
Yeah. So,
now he speaks perfect Spanish.
No, it's still not perfect. But no, I mean, I thought I spoke pretty good Spanish when we went there. But like we were living with all the students, and there's some people who speak English. Like the director is Guatemalan, but he speaks really good English. His name's Jose, and he'd be there sometimes during the week. But when he leaves, nobody speaks English.
Right.
And so I have to, any issues that come up with, we had like 18 students the first year. So any drama, that comes up, anything
Yeah.
that breaks,
Yeah.
anybody who's freaking out, anybody who's upset, like that. I need to be able to understand what they're talking about. So I was just like, but that's cool because I wanted to get better at Spanish.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
And then I had to translate for Lydia, so I was just like, I was thrown into it.
Yeah.
I
But so
bet.
yeah, I got a lot better by the time we were done.
It actually helped us that he had to translate for me sometimes when we were in like a counseling situation because it would buy us some time. So like,
Yeah.
especially so if it was this girl, you know, she would be talking about this dramatic situation
Sure.
and she would, you know, spend 5 minutes talking and he would just consolidate it to the basics of what happened without all the details
Sure.
to
That's
tell me.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then I would talk back and be like, okay, like we could tell her this. And rather than translate word for word, we found it was easier if I just kind of explained the heart of what I wanted to say.
Sure.
And then he could like catch it and give it back. But it was funny. We found a rhythm, but it
Yeah.
definitely took a minute.
What was that like for you though? So now here you are, like you're in another country. You don't speak the language at all.
Yeah.
So you have one person you can communicate with, which is your husband. But
Yeah.
he's communicating with everybody. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I definitely was worried at first. Like, is this going to be a terrible idea? Like, am I going to get sick of talking to him? But yeah, I feel like it was just like really blessed. Like, God just kind of like used it in a lot of ways. And there was definitely moments where I felt like I could supernaturally understand what was going on.
Sure.
And just like no one in the room is available to translate for me. But like I would just like start praying and God would just like give me words for what was going on and like be able to pray into it. And so I definitely grew from not knowing the language because I had to really like depend on God in spiritual situations. But also it was fun like actually trying to learn the language.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
just in like more social situations, like I was kind of worried about, you know, like, oh, I can't communicate. Are they gonna think I'm quiet and boring, which
Sure.
some of them did at first because I couldn't say anything. But then it developed into like just a really fun bond with especially the girls. We'd have little parties and jokes, and I don't even know how because they didn't make sense to me. But so yeah, I feel like there was like favor on it, but
So good.
yeah, it was good.
Oh, that's great. So you're there and you're translating. But tell us a little bit, like, what was your day-to-day like? What did you do?
Yeah, so we didn't know like what it was gonna be like when we went down there. So everything was like a surprise. But so the ministry rented like this little property, and it's like two houses that are separated, but there's these two little houses, and they all have like kind of little bedrooms and bathrooms. And then we had like kind of a big living room we used as like a classroom.
Yeah.
And so we had the students get there, and like it was pretty nerve-wracking because all their families come to drop their kids off.
Like aunts, cousins, grandma.
Yeah, and Guatemala is really, you know, family-oriented culture.
Sure, yeah.
And they're also very like polite and cordial and stuff, and how they and they're also like the mothers are very protective of their kids. And so like some of these kids are like, you know, they're like in their early 20s, but their mom's like, who's gonna take care of my baby? Kind of thing.
I totally
These
get
Americans.
that.
And we had just got there, so my Spanish is pretty rusty, you know.
Yeah.
And here I've got to meet all their aunts and grandmas and everything, and they're like, "So who's gonna be living here? You know, taking care of everybody?" And be like, me and my wife." And they're like, "Okay," and I'm like trying to speak the best Spanish I can, you know, to convey confidence, you know.
Right?
But I was definitely making some errors. And but yeah, no, they're like, okay, is anyone else gonna be just us, you know, and stuff. And I'm like, we'll take good care of them and everything. And then, but man, trying to like, no way I'm remembering anybody's names.
Sure. Yeah.
I ran into one of the students' moms like later on. Well, he had a mom and a stepmom, and I ran into his biological mom in the city and totally didn't remember who she was because I met so many people.
Sure.
And this lady was really offended, and she was like, "I'm so and so's mom." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I forgot." And she's like, "But I'm his mom," and I really that was bad. But I was like, "Dude, my brain was overwhelmed." So, anyways, that's when we got there, and then. We just kind of developed a routine. We, you know, get up early, do breakfast. there's a guy's house and a girl's house. We have our own little kind of apartment room.
That's good. You're not separated from the houses.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had a little bit of space. And then, so they have to, and the students have to clean, they have to cook, they have to make a budget and do groceries and stuff. And then they got to be at classes. So we had a few classes that we were in charge of. And then they had other pastors and people coming in to give classes.
Okay.
And then we just needed to be there and make sure everything's running.
Sure.
So like when we'd be prepping for our classes and printing stuff off and putting schedules and doing house meetings and stuff like that.
Very cool.
And then in the evenings, dealing with any conflict, praying with people, doing prayer meetings.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
What
So
were
that
the
was most
classes
of
you
it.
guys taught?
Spanish.
The first year, let's see, they told us we could teach whatever we wanted, whatever we felt passionate about. So I taught a class called Paradise Restored,
Okay.
which I just stole the name from a book, but they thought it was cool. It sounds cool in Spanish.
What is it in Spanish?
Paraíso Restaurado.
Ooh.
Yeah, so.
It's pretty good.
And then, so in that class, though, I talked a lot about, parts of the Bible that I think are, really capture the imagination. So I talked a lot about the Garden of Eden.
Sure.
And I tried to, flesh out what was Eden like. And I used a lot of art. I, show them pictures and try to get them imagining paradise with God.
Yeah.
And then I would talk about what the new earth's going to be like and what is heaven like and what is the glory of God like. And we, go through and talk about all the different descriptions of God's glory, the different precious stones and lightning and thunder. And so I got to just kind of talk about all the stuff in the Bible that I think is cool and kind of geek out with them. And that's what I did most of the year. Later on, I kind of switched to whatever topics I thought they needed, like we need to talk about grace or we need to talk about faith or whatever. And then you want to talk about your class?
Yeah, so mine, I focused a lot, or I guess the director, when he told us what classes to do, he said there's 3 categories of what we want this program to look like. One is just the kingdom of God, one is emotional intelligence, and the other is practical skills. So anything within those, feel free to talk about them. So I kind of did a combination at the beginning of the year, talked a lot about, or a lot of it was about relationships. So starting out, what is your relationship with God? It can look totally different in different seasons. And then also, your relationships with discipleship, people in the church, how that should look or can look. And then also, resolving conflict in relationships with each other. And that kind of comes up naturally when you all live together. And this is great practice for you guys. So a lot of it was that. And then also just some practical things of budgeting and time management and fun things that I like to talk about that people don't always care about. But and then the second year, several of the students stayed on as mentors, and so they were kind of helping us mentor the new students.
Sure.
And so we did a separate classes with them.
Very cool.
And so I took them through the book Eat That Frog, which I don't know if you've read it.
Yes,
So I found a Spanish version, and it's just a really practical book.
Yes.
And then also we did some more, I guess, Bible study type devotes, worship times with them. So those are the main ones that I did, and then he also did some more the second year.
Yeah, then the second year, they wanted to do an English class, and I was kind of not trying to do it because I'm I can speak English really well, obviously.
Yeah.
But
debatable.
Well, at times. But then explaining the grammar of English in another language. So I was I'm not trying to do that. And we had a guy lined up to do it, and he ended up not being able to. Or he was really on the fence, and I was all right, I'm just going to do it. I'll just figure it out. And so I taught English, and it was actually it's not as bad as I thought. And I learned a lot about it.
He did a great job.
I learned a lot about English. Yeah, I kind of got into it after a while. And then I did an exercise class too the second year because, we had the lockdown.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't really leave the property. So everyone was super restless, so we would be running around the house, and like I was doing like CrossFit like home workouts that Eric Holton, my friend Eric Holton, had taught me, and but the students loved it. They were all into it. We'd turn on some music and just
That's awesome.
and do workouts.
So tell us, like, what was this like for the students? The students come in, you're starting out. Like, tell us some of the fruit of this journey for them, like how it impacted them, how it changed their lives, things like that. Like, tell us, what was the result? Like, you guys made this huge sacrifice, and uprooting everything, your first year of marriage, and going to Guatemala to serve this ministry. What was the fruit that you see from it? Like, what impacted you on this journey?
Yeah, there was a huge change in all the students, both years, and they came from kind of different backgrounds, so some of their transformations was different. Like the students who came out of the orphanage, they kind of had a whole different starting point.
Sure.
Some of them, had just been through really rough stuff, really rough background, and a lot of trauma, abuse, and stuff. So they kind of were unlearning like ways they hide and react and stuff, and just kind of like, they were kind of had some different things. But then we also had students who just like had been in church their whole life, and they're like, oh, cool, I want to do this program.
Yeah.
So they kind of had different starting places, but for a lot of them, like they had never really experienced like the presence of God before. Sure. A lot of them received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. A lot of them learned about, the gifts of the Holy Spirit for the first time there, and like by the end of it, they were all comfortable prophesying.
So cool.
A lot of them were speaking in tongues and just like on fire for God. By the time we got done, they were on fire for God. And we also, part of the program, we were doing a program on the weekends in collaboration with the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. Mm-hmm. They have like kind of a partner ministry that partners with them in Guatemala. So we were able to go to their meetings and watch the Bethel school curriculum with Spanish subtitles.
Okay.
Which was pretty cool. And so they were getting activated and just experiencing God and like experiencing the love of God, learning about miracles, learning that God heals people and stuff. So for a lot of them, like in Guatemala, if you go to some church in some rural village, like there's no telling kind of like what version of Christianity you're getting, because there's just, it's not centralized, it's not connected. So for some of them, it's just like, I didn't know that this stuff was real. I didn't know you could feel God. I didn't know you could feel God's love. Like it was just like kind of a philosophy or whatever. So there was that, and then, oh man, there's a lot, but that's just, I'll let Lydia talk about some of the other stuff.
I was going to say, like, the thing that I noticed consistently in each person was just, like, growing in their identity.
Yeah.
And so, like, their identity in God and who they are in God, but also just, like, personal, like, confidence and, like, figuring out what they wanted to do with their life, which is huge with any young person, whether you're in Guatemala or in the States or, the world. It's kind of just, like, an age thing where you're trying to figure out, like, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
Why am I on earth? Existential things that go through your mind.
Yeah.
So the students were between the age of 17 and 25. And so, like Levi said, they're from all different backgrounds, like economically, but also just that age group is kind of a large gap as well. And so some of them they all wanted to go to college. Some of them had started taking college classes or they had started working and just kind of gone a different direction, or they were just like trying to figure out their next steps. And so I think that the main thing you could see at the beginning is just like there was something missing as far as like how God connected with their life, like practically. And so for me, it was really cool to see like their relationship with God grow. They felt the love of God. They were able to talk to God and prophesy and see miracles and do those things. And then it also just naturally translated into them being more confident. And like they were, by the end of the year, able to tell you, like, this is a 5-year plan for my life. I'm okay with it changing, but I know that God has my back. And like just being confident in that sort of thing is like really cool for me too.
That's amazing.
Like witness and be a part of.
Yeah.
So.
What did you guys personally get from this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. Like, personally, like, I had, like, these moments of, like, revival, like, personal revival with God while I was down there. Yeah. Like, I was, like, on my own trip, like, Because we were going to like these Bethel classes,
Yeah.
and I'm listening to all this really good teaching,
Yeah.
and like I had an encounter with God down there that was like one of the two most powerful encounters I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it came out of, well, I was preparing, like I learned so much preparing my classes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I really want to explain this to them. So I'm just like reading more Bible than ever.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do like this big, one of my last classes I wanted to do about like, what is Jesus like?
Yeah.
And I wanted to like, so I was going through the Bible and getting like all the best examples of like the gentleness of Christ,
Sure.
the humbleness of Christ,
Yeah.
like the compassion of Christ. You know, like these really powerful things about Jesus.
Yeah.
And like there's moments of it all throughout the Bible.
Yes.
So I was like just trying to get the best ones and then like lay them all out and explain it all.
Yeah.
And so like I was doing a lot of study for that. And then I was like, I need to watch The Passion of the Christ after I'd done all that. Because I'm trying to
Sure.
wrap my mind around what Jesus did, how he offered himself,
Yeah.
how he, you know, gave himself up like a sheep to the slaughter, like this suffering servant who just willingly gave his life for us. And so like, I'm just like going back to, you know, the beginning of what this is all about.
Yeah.
And I watched The Passion of the Christ, and then I was just like praying, and dude, I just got wrecked.
That's awesome.
And I felt like I was just thanking Jesus and just weeping and just kind of had this new revelation. And then like I felt like Jesus came into the room and I could feel him, and I was embracing him and just like
So
weeping
cool.
on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And dude, I was wrecked. I'm in my room taking communion by myself. All the lights are off. Lydia was gone.
It's amazing.
So anyways, I had some personal moments that were really
Yeah.
big for me, but kind of more as like a couple, I think like we really learned so much because we had all this hands-on pastoral type stuff, like taking care of these guys, listening to them, praying with them, giving them counsel. And we had been kind of learning about that stuff before we left because we were doing your like discipleship and the umbrella like meetings and stuff. So we were just kind of learning, and we had read, you know, Danny Silk, and so we knew some theory kind of.
Sure.
But then we were down there, it's like, dude, there's just stuff like the first week, like there's this girl manifesting demons
Sure.
and stuff, which was like, not all of it was that crazy. But there was, you know, there was a lot of drama. There's
Sure,
people
yeah.
jealous at each other, people just broken down, people.
Insecurities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just meeting with people, and we were thrown right into it, and we're like, okay, I'm translating, this girl is saying that she's mad at the other girl, and she thinks the other girl hates her. And do you think that she's jealous? Or do you think they're both jealous? You know?
So normal girl
and then,
stuff.
Right, yeah.
and then like,
Tuesday.
and then like,
we call
like,
that Tuesday.
yeah. And like she was saying with the translation delay, I was like, do you think she's just being dramatic? Should we pray for her or just like give her advice? You know, just kind of like.
Can I just say, I would just like love to see you translating a disagreement between two girls about their feelings, about how they feel about each other. 'Cause I'm a girl.
Yes.
It was awkward.
Yeah, I can't even
to
translate that
see
in
that.
English.
Yeah. But
So funny.
so we were just doing that like day in, day out.
Sure.
But I found that like our senses, you know, you kind of have those senses where you're just like, what's going on with this person?
Yeah.
What is God doing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Where's this coming from? Where's this attitude coming from? You're like, got your antennas up. And you guys, I mean, that's your world.
It is.
But like, so that was like us getting a crash course in that.
Yeah.
And it was, in Lydia's class, you know, she's teaching a lot of stuff about identity. So we're reinforcing that. We're like, hey, you know, this is a lie. Like, this is not what God says about you. And just doing that stuff. So when we came back, I remember like the first break we came back on, I noticed we were doing that just with our friends.
Yeah.
Like because we were so tuned in, it's like, yeah, like he just said something that sounded kind of negative. Be like, hey, you know, God's gonna fix that. God's got plans for you, and just kind of like tuned into that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I was like, I think we really grew.
We honestly didn't really realize it until
Sure.
we came back. Like,
Yeah.
we came back in between the 2 years to visit, and it was like kind of an eye-opening thing for us, because you always wonder, you know, like we're in these like hyper spiritual environments, and like is it just because we're here, you know, or is God like really like, are we actually growing and like learning and stuff? And we did, and so it's good.
And we were just like trying to remember everything we learned, because we had done stuff with you, and we also had done the Pastoral Avenue,
Yes. Yeah.
and we had met with Chad and Janet when we were doing that, and we had read all this Danny Silk stuff, so we're just like pulling on all of it.
Get our notebooks out, like.
Right.
You had me read this book, Loving Our Kids on Purpose,
Yes.
which I kind of was like, didn't know why you had me read it, because like, that was before, I think it was before we were even married.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
dude, that book was gold. Like,
gold,
I'm
man.
like
Yeah.
reading, I was rereading it, and I was like, yeah, okay. I need to like help them without punishing them.
Yeah.
I need to empower them to make their own decisions and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like, and stuff that Chad and Janet had told us, like, when you meet with someone, just ask God, like, what is he doing?
Sure.
What does he want? Does he want you to give him a word, to pray? And so like we were doing that like all the time.
Yeah.
So all that stuff really came alive for us.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because like we would see God work through us.
Yeah.
Really good.
And it was like, so that was really cool.
It's good too. Like I think about a lot of different things. Like when I remember when this opportunity came up for you guys, there's a lot of things that brought me security and saying, yeah, they're ready for something like this. And one, you had done the Avenue program, which was our internship program based here at the Point on how to pastor people and care for people. And you guys had excelled and done really well. You had done the Rev program, and that was our discipleship group. Like you guys had put so much time in like strengthening yourself spiritually, even before this happened. Like you were on this journey. I got the pleasure of meeting with you pretty often. In my world, pretty often. Probably not in your world, but in my world, pretty often for a couple of years. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and watching you guys grow, and also your faithfulness, right? Just your faithfulness to everything. I was joking with Manny. This is right before you guys left. I remember we met one time, and I was like, "What do you like to do for fun?" And you said, "I like to take a hammock and go by myself in the woods and camp." And that didn't make no sense to me, man. I was like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard, right? And
Guess what we did this winter?
right, I was just gonna say this winter we went winter hot
Winter
tent camping,
camping.
and there was
Hot
no one.
tent
Yeah,
camping?
In
so
the middle of winter.
it was a
went
tent with a
camping.
stove inside of it, so you could stay warm.
Wow.
It was very isolating, very peaceful, and I was like, "This is really nice." And I remember saying to Mandy, "This is what Levi was talking about. This is all right." But we had all these moments with you that just reinforced our belief in your ability to carry weight and help people along on a journey. And I'm so excited you guys did it, right? I'm very excited you're back, right?
Yeah.
But I remember when you guys were getting ready to go. You guys, I would say you're contemplators. You really think through things for a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember the first conversation we had about it. You said, "Yeah, I think we're going to do it, but let me go think." That's the fastest he's ever almost made a decision the whole time I've known him. You know,
that
but you
was
had
thinking
faith for
fast.
it. You know, and it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch. But like I know we're kind of running out of time, but let me just kind of ask just this question. So you do this for 2 years. You take this time out, and now you're coming back. What's it been for you guys coming back into like your kind of everyday journey of life? What's it been like going from that super spiritual environment, that cultivating place, to now being back here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's been a really crazy transition, because it was like, it would have been a crazy transition, but also like we're pregnant.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to have a baby. We
Yeah.
had to find a house when we came back. We also did a road trip around the country.
Yeah.
Like a baby moon road trip. So it's like and then it was the new year. So it's like transitions on top of transitions.
Yeah.
Right.
And with the pandemic, there's just a lot going on. in the
Right.
world.
Absolutely.
So, but I was just kind of thinking about this, like, where are we at now? And, before we went to Guatemala, like we were talking about, we were just kind of doing different programs, discipleship forums, and basically where I was at, where we were both at, just like, how can we keep growing and finding how we fit into the church, what's our role, And then when we went to Guatemala, we kind of had in mind that we were going to keep growing in our gifts down there.
Yeah.
And also we thought it would be cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I always feel bad because people are like, "Oh, you left everything to come here to Guatemala." Like, people would say that to me
Yeah.
down there. I'd be like, "Yeah, but I kind of wanted to come. Like, it's cool. It's cool to
Right.
travel. And there's nothing wrong with that." But we kind of had in mind, like, we're going to be able to grow in our gifts. And so, now that we're back, obviously we're kind of in this mindset of becoming parents and reading all these baby books and getting the nursery ready and stuff like that. but we're also just kind of like want to get back and see what's next. Like, how can we keep growing in our gifts?
Yeah.
How can we find where we fit into the community, and like how we can like help build the church?
So good.
And so, yeah. You guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has so far just been like figuring out routines and jobs and life and what that looks like realistically. But yeah, as far as like in the church, I think it's always like everyone has different like people that they connect with well, and so just like being aware of that. I think that we're both kind of better with like one-on-one rather than like preaching to the group. Actually, he's gotten a lot better at preaching, so if you want to use him, take it.
I've been preaching in Spanish.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, but yeah, just like being intentional with God of like, hey, like every time I walk into a room or a building or a store, like just like asking what you're saying is kind of like a habit that I got in there because I didn't know what was going on and I had to ask him. But now that like just like having to bring that into our day-to-day life of not just going back into the routines of working and all of that, but just like being aware of God's people and how to love them the best and how we can be a part of it. So.
And something I was thinking about recently, so we've been going to this Kickstart program, which is like a teaching and discipleship forum at the church. But listening to Angela Hughes talk about just kind of like, what is the church?
Yeah, so good.
You know, what is the church? And then and how, you know, everything like Andrew Hughes is doing is like, as an apostle, is like, how can I strengthen this church?
Yeah.
How, in all the fivefold ministries, is like, how can we bring the body to maturity unto Christ? And like, that's really the big picture. And like, that's stuff that I've known, like from my childhood, like you're saying, but to hear that, I just kind of got a fresh revelation of like, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like each one of us, how do I strengthen my own walk with God?
Yeah.
How can I strengthen my gifts and come under discipleship and build community and build relationships and just like take my place in the temple, you know?
Yeah.
As a living stone, like plugged in with the other stones, and just help bring the church to maturity and to be the light to the world. And like, that's kind of the big picture. And I kind of like gotten refreshed with that, so
good.
We're just kind of like, we're back on that journey. We'll probably always be on that journey.
Always,
but like, how can we get better at the gifts we have? And really, like right now, we're just kind of focusing on community because
so good.
There's some new faces since we've been gone. Some things have shifted. Some things have moved. So we're like, how do we fit into this now? You know, where can we help? And just getting to meet people and hang out with people and not hibernate. During the winter.
It's interesting because we never did anything as cool as you guys and go to Guatemala. But we went to California for 3 years and planted a church.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty
cool.
The same
it's not
thing.
Guatemala, like teaching children how to be men.
We tried to learn
you know?
Spanish, but we were
we weren't ready to learn Spanish.
I think we learned one phrase.
Yeah, and it wasn't very good.
Buenos dias or something.
Nice.
Is that something?
Buenos noches.
Buenos noches.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Don't even know what
Is
it
that
means
good
anymore.
night?
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Close.
Close.
Gracias.
So.
Or good nachos. It sounded kind of like good nachos.
Oh,
too.
amen.
I remember coming back in we were there for 3 years. We're part of the point. We're with the point, but we're not in the same state.
Yeah.
So we came back and it's like we had to kind of like start all over making relationships again.
Yeah.
Because you have the relationships,
Yeah.
but you've been gone.
Yeah, it's
I've been
different.
gone,
So
people's
it's
lives
just
have
different.
moved
People
on.
have moved on.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, right?
it's like it's like
They've done their own thing, right?
It's like they stopped living because we were gone, And it took some adjusting for us. It took a little bit of time. I often have thought about that with you guys coming back. Like, it's going to take this some time to adjust. And I think like we've been doing this Kickstart discipleship program. And I'm so grateful Andrew put this on. I think it was perfect timing.
Yeah.
But, we have some people in our church that have been Christians longer than I've been alive, and a good friend of mine, Jeff Johnson, he's an elder in Holland. He was at Kickstart the other day, and I was teaching on something on the prodigal son, and he came up right now. I gotta be honest, like Jeff Johnson to me, just like he's like the best at everything. He's the best athlete I've ever known. He's one of the smartest guys I know. He's just really amazing. And he was like, every time you speak, Karl, I learn something new. And I thought, I was just so taken back by that moment. I remember we got in the car and I said, in that moment, like, dude, it like Jeff made my month, you know what I mean? Made my year. It was just so encouraging and so strengthening. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, there's one thing I want to tell Levi and Lydia when I sit with them. As you're coming back in and you're figuring out how you can strengthen the church, just be you.
Yeah.
Because it's you that strengthens the church. Like, we work together, we're one body, and you're here because of who you are, not because of who you're going to become.
Yeah.
Right? Who you are right now gives us strength and increases us. And
That's really good.
the willingness you had to go to Guatemala and serve for 2 years. I know you wanted to, and I know it's exciting, but I also know it's hard. You know, I know
was
it's
a
hard.
sacrifice.
We were ready to come back.
I bet you were, you know, and there's an aspect to this that even just that piece, you know, man, it's going to bring faith for the next generation that wants to do the same thing and is willing to take those same steps. So I just want to say to you guys, you're doing amazing. We're so glad to have you back, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Buenos noches.
Buenos noches.
Stop.